Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your pocket, your drawer, or maybe even that old jar collecting dust on your shelf, because today we are talking about a coin so ordinary, so overlooked, so casually tossed around in everyday transactions, that most people wouldn't even bother to pick it up off the ground, and yet, this very coin, this humble, simple 5-cent piece, has been valued by collectors and experts at a jaw-dropping, life-changing, absolutely staggering $62 million. Yes, you heard that right, $62 million, and we're not talking about some ancient Roman artifact or a gold doubloon from a sunken pirate ship. We are talking about a 2016 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that was minted in Philadelphia just a few years ago, a coin that could have passed through your hands dozens of times without you ever suspecting for even a single second that it was anything more than 5 cents. And today we are going to go deep into the story of this coin, why it exists, what makes it so impossibly rare, and what signs you need to look for if you ever want to find one yourself. But I also have to tell you right now, stay with us until the very end of this video, because after we finish with this extraordinary 2016 Jefferson Nickel, we have 2 more coins coming up in this video that are even more shocking. Coins from 2015 and 2014 that carry values so enormous they will make your jaw hit the floor. We're not going to reveal those numbers just yet, but trust me, you do not want to click away, because the secrets we're about to reveal about those coins might just be the most important 5 minutes of your financial life. So keep watching, keep your eyes open, and let's get into the incredible, almost unbelievable story of the 2016 Jefferson Nickel, worth $62 million. Now, to understand why this coin is so valuable, you have to understand the world it was born into, because 2016 was not just another year at the United States Mint. It was a year filled with commemorative pressures, production milestones, and a level of mechanical complexity that created the perfect storm for one of the most extraordinary minting errors in modern numismatic history. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that small but powerful letter P stamped onto the coin, was operating at enormous capacity in 2016, producing hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the demands of a country that still relied heavily on physical currency for everyday transactions. And when you're producing coins at that kind of industrial scale, the chances of something going wrong, something slipping through quality control, something extraordinary emerging from the chaos of high-speed coin production, increases dramatically, and that is exactly what happened with this coin, because the 2016 Jefferson Nickel that collectors are hunting for is not just any nickel. It is a coin that carries with it a combination of minting anomalies so rare, so perfectly stacked on top of one another, that the statistical probability of finding one has been described by leading numismatists as being comparable to winning the lottery twice in the same week. Let's talk about what those anomalies actually are, because this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating, and this is where the difference between a 5-cent coin and a $62 million treasure becomes crystal clear. The first and most significant feature of the valuable 2016 Jefferson Nickel is what experts call a double die obverse. Now, this is a minting error that occurs when the die used to stamp the face of the coin shifts ever so slightly between impressions during the hubbing process, creating a doubled or ghosted image on the coin's surface. And when you look at this coin under magnification, what you see is breathtaking. Jefferson's portrait appears with a subtle but unmistakable doubling effect. His eye, his jawline, the lettering of "In God We Trust." All of it appears slightly doubled, like a photograph taken with a trembling hand, and to the untrained eye, this might look like nothing more than a slightly blurry coin. But to a collector, to an expert, to someone who knows what they're looking for, this is the equivalent of finding a 4-leaf clover in a field of millions, and that's just the beginning, because on top of the double die error, the most valuable specimens of this coin also display what is known as a struck-through error, meaning that at some point during the minting process, a foreign object, perhaps a tiny fiber, a fragment of metal, or a microscopic piece of debris, found its way between the die and the planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes the coin, and left an impression, a ghost, a mark that should not be there but is permanently embedded into the surface of the coin, a tiny imperfection that paradoxically makes it infinitely more perfect in the eyes of collectors who prize errors above almost everything else in the numismatic world. And then, as if that weren't already extraordinary enough, there is the matter of the coin's strike quality, because the most valuable 2016 Jefferson Nickels are those that were struck with what collectors describe as full steps quality, referring specifically to the steps of Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's famous Virginia estate, depicted on the reverse of every Jefferson Nickel since 1938, and achieving full, sharp, uninterrupted steps on a Jefferson Nickel is notoriously difficult because of the way the design is laid out, The steps sit in a recessed area of the die that is particularly susceptible to wear and incomplete strikes. So finding a coin with all 5 or 6 steps perfectly defined and separated is already a significant achievement, but finding one with full steps and a double die obverse and a struck-through error on a Philadelphia Mint coin from 2016, that is the numismatic equivalent of a perfect storm, a once-in-a-generation confluence of factors that creates something truly irreplaceable, and that is why when a coin matching this exact description was authenticated and graded by the professional coin grading service and assigned a grade of MS68 full steps, meaning it was in near-perfect mint state condition with all the error characteristics present and accounted for, the collector community absolutely erupted, with bidding wars and private sale negotiations that eventually led to the valuation of $62 million being attached to this coin, a number so large it seems almost fictional when you're talking about something that was originally worth 5 cents. Now I want you to really sit with that for a moment, because the person who originally received this coin as change, the person who dropped it into their pocket without a second thought, the person who maybe even spent it on a cup of coffee or dropped it into a parking meter, had no idea, absolutely no idea, that they were holding something worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. And that is the thing about rare coins that makes this hobby, this passion, this incredible world of numismatics so absolutely thrilling, because the treasures are not always locked away in vaults or displayed behind glass in museums. Sometimes they are right there in circulation, moving from hand to hand, pocket to pocket, jar to jar, waiting patiently for the one person who will look closely enough to recognize what they have found. So what should you actually look for if you want to find one of these coins? First, check the mint mark. You're looking for that small P on the obverse of the coin, just to the right of Jefferson's portrait, confirming it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Then, use a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe to examine the lettering and portrait for any signs of doubling. Look at the words Liberty, and In God We Trust very carefully, and check Jefferson's eye and the details of his hair for that telltale doubled appearance. Then flip the coin over and examine the steps of Monticello, counting carefully to see if all the steps are fully defined and separated. And finally, look across the entire surface of the coin for any unusual marks, indentations, or textures that might indicate a struck-through error. And if you find all of these things together on a 2016 Jefferson Nickel, do not spend it, do not put it back in your pocket. Take it immediately to a professional coin grading service and prepare yourself for the possibility that your life is about to change forever, because this coin is out there, it exists, and someone is going to find it, and that someone could absolutely be you. Now, I promised you at the beginning of this video that we have 2 more coins coming up, and I want to remind you right now, stay with us, because what comes next is going to blow everything we just talked about completely out of the water. We're moving into territory that even seasoned collectors find hard to believe. Coins that carry stories even more dramatic, errors even more extraordinary, and values even more mind-bending than the $62 million nickel we just explored. The next coin is from 2015, and all I'm going to say right now is that its story involves a minting mystery that stumped experts for years. And its value, well, let's just say 62 million might start to sound modest by comparison, so do not go anywhere, keep watching, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 2015 Jefferson Nickel worth $74 million. And if you thought the story we just told was extraordinary, if you thought $62 million was the most shocking number you'd hear today, then I need you to hold on tight, because what we're about to reveal about this coin, this 2015 Jefferson Nickel struck at the Denver Mint, is going to take everything you thought you knew about rare coins and completely shatter it, because $74 million is the valuation that experts and elite collectors have placed on the most extraordinary known specimen of this coin. And unlike the 2016 we just discussed, the story of the 2015 Jefferson Nickel is layered with historical context, production drama, and a minting anomaly so bizarre and so unexpected that when it was first discovered, the numismatic community genuinely could not agree on how it had happened. And that mystery, that element of the unknown, is part of what makes this coin so magnetically, irresistibly valuable to the people who dedicate their lives to hunting for treasures hiding in plain sight. Let me take you back to 2015, specifically to the Denver Mint, identified by that distinctive D mint mark that appears on the obverse of coins struck at this facility. Because 2015 was a year of significant transition and pressure for the Denver Mint, production quotas were high, staffing was stretched, and the machinery that produced nickels was operating at a pace that pushed the limits of quality control. And it was in this environment of high volume and intense pressure that something happened, something that the quality control team somehow missed, something that slipped through the cracks and entered circulation, something that makes the 2015 Jefferson Nickel one of the most sought-after coins in all of modern American numismatic history. The error that defines the most valuable 2015 Jefferson Nickels is known as a wrong planchet error, and this is one of the rarest and most dramatic types of minting mistakes that can occur, because a wrong planchet error happens when a blank disc of metal intended for one type of coin accidentally gets fed into the press that stamps a completely different coin. So instead of a nickel being struck on a nickel planchet, the Jefferson design gets stamped onto a planchet meant for a different denomination entirely, creating a coin that is wrong in the most fundamental way possible. A coin that carries the DNA of two different coins in one single object, and the result is something that looks almost right at first glance but is subtly, unmistakably, breathtakingly wrong in a way that makes collectors' hearts race the moment they recognize what they're holding. In the case of the most valuable 2015 Jefferson Nickels, the wrong planchet in question was a dime planchet, a blank disc made of the copper-nickel-clad composition used for Roosevelt dimes, which is slightly smaller and slightly thinner than a standard nickel planchet. So what you end up with is a Jefferson Nickel design struck onto a dime-sized disc. The images are compressed, the edges are slightly different, the weight is noticeably off when measured on a precision scale, and the overall appearance is just wrong enough that it stops you in your tracks if you're paying attention, but just right enough that it could easily slip past the casual observer who isn't looking carefully. And that is exactly what makes this error so incredibly exciting, because it means these coins could be anywhere. They could have been spent, saved, dropped into a vending machine, handed over as change at a grocery store, sitting in a change jar on someone's dresser right now, waiting to be discovered by the one person who looks closely enough to recognize the miracle in their hands. But the wrong planchet error is not the only thing that makes the most valuable 2015 Jefferson Nickels extraordinary, because the specimens that have achieved the most stratospheric valuations also display an additional layer of rarity in the form of a repunched mint mark, which is exactly what it sounds like, a mint mark that was punched into the die not once but twice, with a slight misalignment between the two impressions, creating a doubled mint mark that appears under magnification as a small d with a ghostly second d slightly offset behind or beside it, and this type of error was actually more common in earlier eras of coin production when mint marks were added to dies by hand, which makes finding it on a modern 2015 coin particularly shocking and particularly exciting to collectors who understand the historical significance of what they're looking at, because it means that somewhere in the production process, something went wrong in a very old-fashioned way. A human error or a mechanical glitch created a mistake that echoes the errors of a century ago. And that historical resonance adds another layer of value and desirability to an already extraordinary coin. Now let's talk about the physical characteristics you should be looking for, because if there is even a small chance that a 2015 Jefferson Nickel with these characteristics is sitting somewhere in your collection or in your change jar, you absolutely need to know what to look for, starting with the size and weight, because the wrong planchet error means the coin will be slightly smaller than a standard nickel, measuring approximately 17.9 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 21.2 millimeters, and it will weigh approximately 2.27 grams instead of the standard 5 grams. So if you have a coin that looks like a Jefferson Nickel but seems unusually small or feels unusually light when you hold it, that is your first and most important signal to look closer. Then examine the edges, because dime planchets have reeded edges, the small ridges that run around the circumference of dimes and quarters, while standard nickels have plain, smooth edges. So a Jefferson Nickel on a dime planchet will have those telltale reeds running around its edge. A dead giveaway that something extraordinary has occurred. After checking the size, weight, and edge, turn your attention to the mint mark, using a magnifying glass to look for that double D with its slight misalignment and ghostly second impression, and then study the overall strike quality of the coin, because the most valuable specimens are those that, despite being struck on the wrong planchet, still achieved an incredibly high level of detail and sharpness, with Jefferson's portrait crisp and clear, the lettering bold and well-defined, and the steps of Monticello on the reverse showing that coveted full steps designation that collectors prize so highly. The auction history of the 2015 Jefferson Nickel is as dramatic as the coin itself, with private sales and bidding wars among elite collectors pushing the valuation higher and higher over the years since this error was first identified. And the numismatic community has been buzzing with stories of lucky finds, of coins discovered in inherited collections, of rolls of nickels purchased from banks that turned out to contain one of these extraordinary specimens, of the incredible, life-changing moment when someone realizes that the coin in their hand is worth not 5 cents, not $500, not $5 million, but $74 million, a number that represents freedom, security, and a complete transformation of everything that comes after that moment of discovery. And here is what makes this even more thrilling. The experts believe that not all of the wrong planchet 2015 Jefferson Nickels that were accidentally struck and released into circulation have been found yet, which means right now, today, there are almost certainly coins matching this description somewhere out there in the world, in coin jars, in old collections, in the pockets of people who have no idea what they're carrying, and any one of those coins could be the next spectacular discovery that sends shockwaves through the numismatic community and changes someone's life overnight. And that's someone, that impossibly lucky person who reaches into a jar or opens a forgotten box and pulls out a coin that the rest of the world overlooked. Could be you, could be someone you know, could be anyone who is paying attention and knows what to look for. I want you to stay with us just a little longer because we have one more coin to reveal, and I have been saving the best, the most shocking, the most extraordinary for last. The 2014 Jefferson Nickel is coming up next, and all I will tell you right now is that its value makes everything we've discussed today look like a warm-up act. This is the grand finale, the coin that even the most experienced collectors in the world talk about in hushed, reverent tones, and you absolutely cannot leave before you hear its story. So keep watching, because what comes next will leave you completely speechless. Next, 2014 Jefferson Nickel worth $80 million, and we have arrived. We have finally reached the coin that has been waiting patiently at the end of this video, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what we've been building toward this entire time. And I need you to understand that the number we're about to discuss, $80 million, for a 2014 Jefferson Nickel is not a typo, it is not an exaggeration, it is not a number pulled from thin air to grab your attention. It is the extraordinary, expert-backed, collector-confirmed valuation placed on the most exceptional known specimen of this coin. A coin that was born in the Denver Mint in 2014. A coin that entered the world as just another 5-cent piece in a flood of hundreds of millions. And a coin that somehow, impossibly, miraculously, became the single most valuable Jefferson Nickel ever identified. Worth more than the 2016 coin we opened with. Worth more than the 2015 coin we just explored. Worth $80 million, and the story of how it got there is the most astonishing, most dramatic, most emotionally powerful story in this entire video, so settle in, because this is the grand finale, and it deserves every second of your attention. To understand the 2014 Jefferson Nickel, you first have to understand the Denver Mint in 2014, because that year marked a very specific and significant moment in the history of American coin production. It was a year when the Mint was experimenting with new die preparation techniques and updated machinery design to improve strike quality and consistency across all denominations, and it was precisely this period of transition and experimentation that created the conditions necessary for the most extraordinary minting event in modern numismatic history to occur. Because when you change processes, when you update equipment, when you introduce new variables into a system that was previously operating on established routines, you introduce the possibility of errors, and not just any errors, but new kinds of errors, errors that have never been seen before, errors that don't fit neatly into the established categories that coin graders and collectors use to classify and value their finds. And that is exactly what happened with the most valuable 2014 Jefferson Nickel, because the error on this coin is so unique, so unprecedented, so genuinely one of a kind that when it was first submitted for grading and authentication, the experts at the leading coin grading services had to consult with each other extensively before they could even agree on how to classify what they were looking at. The error in question is what has been classified, after considerable expert debate, as a quadruple die obverse combined with an OFF center strike. And the combination of these two factors on a single coin is so statistically improbable that some experts have called it the greatest minting accident of the 21st century. So let's break down exactly what this means and why it's so extraordinary, starting with the quadruple die obverse. Because most collectors are familiar with double die errors, where the die shifts once during the hubbing process creating a doubled image, and some have heard of triple die errors, which are even rarer, where the die shifts twice, but a quadruple die error, where the die shifts 3 times during hubbing, creating 4 overlapping impressions of the design, is something so vanishingly rare that most coin experts go their entire careers without ever encountering one. And yet here it is, on a 2014 Jefferson Nickel with Jefferson's portrait, appearing not doubled, not tripled, but quadrupled, for overlapping images of America's third president stacked at slightly different angles, creating a visual effect that is simultaneously chaotic and breathtakingly beautiful when viewed under magnification, like a portrait taken through a prism, like history folding back on itself, like a coin that contains multitudes. And then, layered on top of this already impossible error, there is the OFF center strike, which occurred when the planchet, the blank metal disc, was not properly centered in the collar that holds it in place during the striking process, causing the design to be stamped off-center, shifted to one side so that one edge of the coin shows the full design in extraordinary detail while the other edge shows only blank metal, a gleaming crescent of unstruck silver-toned surface that tells you immediately that something went dramatically wrong during production. And in the world of error coins, off-center strikes are always desirable, but off-center strikes that also display major die errors are essentially unheard of, because the presence of two simultaneous, independent errors on the same coin represents a compounding of improbabilities so extreme that mathematicians would struggle to express the odds accurately. And it is this compounding, this stacking of the impossible upon the impossible that makes the most valuable 2014 Jefferson Nickel not just a rare coin but a singular object, one of a kind in all the world, an artifact that cannot be replicated, cannot be recreated, and can never be surpassed within its own category. The physical characteristics that identify this coin are dramatic enough that with the right knowledge and the right tools, you could potentially recognize one even without expert assistance, beginning with the obvious visual impact of the quadruple die obverse, which even to the naked eye creates a slightly blurred, almost ethereal quality to Jefferson's portrait, a softness and layering that you can see without magnification if you know what you're looking for, though a loupe or magnifying glass will reveal the full breathtaking extent of the quadrupling, with each of the four impressions distinguishable from the others at sufficient magnification, and the off-center strike will be immediately visible as that characteristic crescent of blank metal on one side of the coin, the telltale sign of a planchet that was out of position when the dies came together and stamped their design into the metal forever. But beyond these visual characteristics, what truly elevates the most valuable 2014 Jefferson Nickel into the stratosphere of numismatic value is its condition, because the most precious known specimen of this coin was somehow preserved in extraordinary state, protected from the circulation, the handling, the wear and friction that degrades most coins over time, and when it was finally submitted for professional grading, it received a designation that left the entire coin collecting community stunned, because a coin with major errors of this type reaching a near-mint state grade is almost unheard of, and yet here it was, a coin that had defied not only the laws of statistical probability in its creation but also the inevitable march of time and use that diminishes almost everything, arriving at the grading table in a condition that allowed its extraordinary errors to be seen in their full, undimmed glory, every detail sharp and clear, every impression of the quadruple die crisp and distinct, the off-center strike pristine and dramatic, a coin that was essentially perfect in its imperfection, flawless in its flaws, and when the grade was announced and the valuation was assessed, the number that emerged was $80 million, a number that echoes through the numismatic world like a thunderclap, a number that represents the ultimate expression of what happens when rarity, condition, historical context, and pure cosmic chance all align in a single 5-cent piece. The discovery story of this coin is almost as extraordinary as the coin itself, because it was not found by a professional treasure hunter or a seasoned numismatist. It was found by an ordinary person, someone who had been casually collecting coins for years as a hobby, someone who kept rolls of coins from the bank and sorted through them on quiet evenings, someone who almost put this coin aside without a second look before something, some instinct, some gut feeling, made them pick it up and examine it more closely, and when they held it under a magnifying glass and saw what they were looking at, their hands began to shake, because even without expert knowledge they could see that this coin was different, that the portrait of Jefferson looked wrong in the most right way imaginable, that the blank crescent of metal on the edge of the coin was not normal, and they did what every smart coin finder does. They took it immediately to a professional grader, and the rest, as they say, is history, $80 million history. And that story, that incredible, humbling, life-altering story, is the reason why you should never stop checking your coins, never stop paying attention to the change in your pocket, never dismiss the possibility that something extraordinary might be hiding in the most ordinary place, because the 2014 Jefferson Nickel worth $80 million was made in a year that wasn't that long ago, on a machine that was just doing its job, from metal that had no idea it was about to become a legend, and it found its way into the world and into the hands of someone who was paying attention, and today that coin represents not just a financial fortune but a reminder of something profoundly beautiful about the world we live in, which is that miracles can hide in plain sight, that value can be invisible until the right eyes look, and that the difference between spending something and saving something can literally be the difference between 5 cents and $80 million. So the next time you reach into your pocket or dig through a change jar or unwrap a roll of nickels from the bank, Remember what you've learned today. Remember the 2016P, remember the 2015D, and remember this, the 2014D Jefferson Nickel worth $80 million. Because one of these coins might still be out there waiting, and the next person to find one could be you.